I'm going to show you three positions, and you tell me what they have in common. Here's position number one. Here's position number two. Notice it's subtly different. And here's position number three. Again, that's position number one, position number two, and position number three. Well, hopefully you said they all have a king, a knight, and a rook for the only pieces that white has, right? In all these positions, it's a king, a knight, and a rook. King, a knight, and a rook. And Johann Berger made all three of these puzzles. Very, very nice. And you're going to see how the king, the rook, and the knight can work together in some incredible ways. Okay. And the last position is actually very interesting because Stockfish was confused. I actually took a screenshot of this, which I'll show you right now. This is what Stockfish said when I first plugged it in. Okay. It showed over here, you can see basically thinks it's equal, slight advantage for white, but he didn't really see anything. Only after you get into the puzzle did Stockfish realize, oh, wait a second, it's a win for white. And then the first two positions are very interesting because, like I said, it's basically exactly the same except for this pawn here as opposed to this knight here, which we're going to talk about in just a second, why that matters, okay? So first position, and by the way, the pawns are going down the board in this direction. It's white to play and win. What's the winning move for white? There's only one correct move. If you had a chance to look at that, the first thing that we need to understand here is that black's about to get a queen. And our rook is not in a position to stop it because the pawn is in the way. We can't take the pawn, it's defended. We don't have time to come around, this way. It's too many moves. And our knight is not in a position to get over here in time. Which means what? We have to change our strategy. Instead of stopping the pawn, we have to try to checkmate the king. It's the only plan that makes sense. So how do we do that? Well, there's two moves that should have popped into your mind, knight to f4 and knight to h4, because both of these moves allow us to go to g6, which would be checkmate. Notice we have the rook, we have the king. So the question is, which one should we play? And the correct answer is knight to h4. And I'm going to show you the solution here first, and then we'll come back and you'll be able to understand why knight to f4 doesn't accomplish the same things, okay? So knight to h4 threatens checkmate immediately. So if black were to simply get a queen, thank you very much. The game is over. That's pretty nice, and we win. But of course, black doesn't have to do that, and they can simply play bishop to c2 and control that square. And now is where it kind of gets tricky for us. What do we do? If you had a chance to look at that, we shift our focus and we go rook to a5, threatening checkmate from a different direction. We've got the king here. So if we bring this rook over, so for example, black says, okay, I'll get a queen. We could simply come over with check. Yes, they can block, but knight to g6 is a very nice, kind of like a smothered checkmate in the corner because we're pinning the bishop here. A beautiful, beautiful checkmate. That's the idea. But black, of course, can see what we're trying to do and decides to play the move bishop to d1. And they control that square so that we can't go there. All right, so what do we play now? You had a chance to look at that. The move is rook to a6. Again, threatening checkmate, but now the bishop is not able to stop us from going there. Okay, great. Well, black is not done yet, and they say, all right, well, I'll just move my king to stop you from going there with your rook. What do we play now? You had a chance to look at that. The move is knight to f5. This is a critical move in this puzzle that you had to see because now rook to h6 checkmate is unstoppable. And the important thing here is by playing rook to a5 first and causing the bishop to go to d1, notice it moved off of that diagonal so that our knight could go to f5. And now, yes, black can get a queen, but who cares? This is checkmate, okay? And it's unstoppable. Really nice solution. Now, going back to the beginning, let's take a look. Why didn't knight to f4 accomplish the same thing? Well, let's follow the same line. Bishop to c2, okay? We try to come around this way, rook to a5. Black says, no, I'm not going to let you do that. You say, okay, I'll go back here, threatening checkmate over here. The king comes up to stop that. And now we move our knight to f5. Wait a minute. Can't go there. We don't have the follow-up move. That's why the knight needed to be on h4, right? And you could try, yeah, there's really nothing. I mean, I guess you could try this. Just threaten a checkmate if they got the queen. This would work, okay? But black's not going to get the queen. They're going to just simply defend this square, probably with their knight like this. And we don't have anything. Okay, so it was very critical that you played the knight to the correct square earlier for the win. Now, that's great and all, but let's jump over here, and you'll notice that the knight that was there is now replaced by a pawn here. Before I say anything, what do you think the winning idea is in this position? How might this change what we just looked at? Well, if you had a chance to look at that, of course, we have the same problem of black's about to get a queen. So we have to figure out a way to checkmate the king. And now it's interesting because we don't even have two options here because the pawn, we only have one. So we have to go knight to h4. That's pretty straightforward. But after bishop c2, now you might notice the problem. Remember what we did before? Well, the pawn is in the way. So what should we do? If you had a chance to look at that, the move is simply rook to a6. And it's the same idea that, okay, if the pawn's there, we're going to go for the only place we can on the 6th rank to deliver the checkmate. But now, of course, the king is going to move up and stop us. And what's our follow-up going to be? If you had a chance to look at that, if you remember last time we played knight to f5, right? And we went for this. But now it's different because now the bishop is there because the bishop never had to move to stop us here because we never were able to go to a5 because of the pawn. Do you see how all this fits together? So what do we do instead? The answer is knight to f3, and we're coming around with a different checkmate. And what's really interesting about this is look at the previous position. Let me go to the beginning. Do you remember where the knight started? Look at that. We couldn't do the same idea before like we can do now because there's no knight here. Fascinating, right? It's amazing how he created this puzzle, and then he just changed one piece. He moved that knight away and put this pawn here, and you have a totally new solution, right? It's fascinating. But the idea is we're coming in here, and black can't really stop it. If they get the queen, of course, knight to g5 check, forces the king to go back. Rook comes over, bishop blocks, and then you have your choice here of how do you want to deliver the checkmate. You can either go bring the knight in, or you can capture here with the rook. Beautiful stuff, okay? And I guess technically if black wanted to survive a little bit longer, they could have played bishop g6 here, but then we can actually just gobble up the pawns, and we're going to win in a different fashion. But it's much cooler, obviously, to win with the beautiful checkmate here, right, with this, okay? So really nice puzzle, and what I liked about it is that it was two puzzles that were basically the same, except one piece totally changed the solution, okay? Now, for my favorite, the third and final position here. Black's pawns are going down the board like this. It's white to play and win. Before I say anything else, what's the winning move? All right, well, if you had a chance to look at that, hope you didn't say capture the rook, because if we take the rook, it's immediately a stalemate. Black has no moves with the king because of our rook here and our king. The pawns are all blockaded, so they can't move. The game is just a stalemate. So you can't take black's rook, which is kind of annoying, right? So what do we do instead? Well, if you just tried something like, let's just say, grabbing a pawn, black is going to simply move their rook, come up here, and you don't really have a good follow-up. For example, you can throw in a check. They're just going to block. Eventually, the king's probably going to escape, and you just can't really do anything. Also, if you try to move like knight to b3, which actually looks like maybe the best try, because we want to go over here to c5 and deliver checkmate, black's going to simply play rook check. You have to move, and the king now escapes. And if the king ever escapes and kind of gets away, you're in trouble. Okay, you're in trouble. You're not going to be able to win. So the only thing to do in this position is knight to e2. And you're threatening a simple fork here that black has to deal with. And the king can't move, right? You can't go here to get out of the fork, which means you have to move the rook. So black says, okay, move the rook here. I'll put you in check. White to play. What do you do now? You had a chance to look at that. You have to play knight to c3 check. Like I said, you don't want to move away and allow the king to escape, or you're out of tricks. Okay, so you have to play knight to c3 check. Keep the king kind of in this mating net, if you will. All right, so black only move here. It's here. White to play and win. What's the winning move? If you had a chance to look at that, we have the nice discover check here. We would like to be able to do something cool by moving our knight and to unleash that. Problem is it's pinned, so we can't. And it goes back to what I said. Yeah, you could try to move your king away, but then you're allowing black's king to just escape, and it's not what you want. So the move that we have to play, rook to e1. And rook to e1 opens up a very clever idea of coming over here, and we have all sorts of problems, or black has all sorts of problems that they have to deal with. Okay, so as an example here, if black were to play the move, let's just say e3, they just push a random pawn. What are we going to do? If you had a chance to look at that, watch this. Rook to a1 check. Of course, they don't want to block, or we simply take with checkmate. So they have to go king to b2. And then we go back to b1 check, forcing them here. And rook to b3 is a beautiful checkmate. Look at that. The knight is playing such a critical role, even though it's been pinned this whole time. You can't move, it's pinned, and yet it's just sitting there helping us checkmate the king. Beautiful, right? So they can't just push a random pawn. And now that you kind of see the idea of check, check, checkmate, the only move that makes sense for black is to play a4 to control that. So we no longer have that same little maneuver because the pawn now is controlling that square. Okay? So what do we do instead? Well, it's still rook to a1 check, but we have a different follow-up. So king goes to b2. White to play and win. What's the winning move? You had a chance to look at that. The move is rook to b1 check. Now, if you were tempted to say rook to a2 check, it's a good try, but watch what's going to happen. King to c1, check, check, and the king escapes. King escapes, and we're not going to win anymore. Okay? So what do we do instead? We don't allow that. We go rook to b1 check, which forces the king back here. But remember, we don't have the checkmate like we did before because the pawn. Okay? So what do we do instead? You got a chance to look at that. The move is rook to b4. Since the pawn has been pushed, we now have a new option, right, that wasn't there before, and we come up and we attack the king from a different angle. And what's really incredible about this is that black is kind of in a Zugzwang, where they don't want to move anything, but they have to, okay? You can't move your king because there's no legal moves. You can't move the pawn. You don't want to move the rook because if you move, let's just say the rook away, you get checkmated. Well, actually, you get skewered first, and then there's checkmate to follow because you don't want to get skewered like that. If you go, let's just say here, so that you could be able to defend, well, then you're getting forked. Okay, so you don't want to do that. If you go here, well, that's just checkmate immediately. If you go here, this is also checkmate right away. You see the problem. There's no good moves for the rook. The king can't move, which means what? Black has to play e3, which they don't want to play. And why don't they want to play e3? You guys tell me. You should be able to solve the puzzle from here. White to play and win. If you had a chance to look at that, it's rook takes a4 check. Forces the king here. Then we go rook to a2 check. Sorry. Yeah, okay, my bad. This is the faster way to do it. I was going to say you could go here. You could also win, but rook to b4 check is the faster way. Forces the king to go to one of 3 squares, and you have a beautiful checkmate in all of them. They go here. Look at that. Look at this. Rook, the knight. This is incredible. If you go here, bam. Look at this. Again, the knight is just sitting there this whole time, doing all this stuff, supporting the rook in so many different ways, but it's pinned. You can't actually use it except you're using it. Incredible. So the king tries to run away. We go b1, and now we see the importance of the pawn being there. Rook to d1 is checkmate. And if the pawn wasn't there, if black wasn't forced to play that, we would have no way to win because the king would always be able to escape and run away. And that's why I said earlier, black was in Zugzwang where they didn't want to move this pawn, but they had to. And so we get this amazing checkmate. I mean, these are just some of the coolest knight, rook, king checkmate combinations. I hope you guys enjoyed these 3 puzzles. Let me know if you solved all of them or none of them or one of them. And I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp, play smart, and take care.